Welcome to Mac Stories Unwind, a weekly review of everything Mac Stories and more. Today's show is brought to you by Tinderbox 9. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is my regular special guest, Mr. Alex Guillot. Hey, Alex.
I'm back again. How's it going, John?
Oh, I'm doing really well. It's good to have you back. Good to have you back. You just work your way right through these stories real quick, and you're all business. You don't mess around at all, and you know games, and you have good recommendations. So I don't know. We might have to get rid of that Italian fella. All right, let's talk about what we had on the site this week. And I had the next installment of our Summer OS preview series, all about reminders, and in particular, two features of reminders that cut across the iPhone, iPad, and the Mac, which are the tag browser and smart lists. And this is really, it's an interesting feature, not just because it makes reminders all that more powerful, but it also has some interesting implications for those OSs and Apple's system apps in general, which we're going to talk about on App Stories next week. But in terms of the actual features themselves, you can assign tags now that you define to any task in the Reminders app. And then with smart lists, you can there are a bunch of filters, including tags, that you can apply to generate these smart lists, which are a lot like a smart playlist in music or something like that. So the smart lists can be filtered by tag, by date, by whether they're flagged or have a priority set. Bunch of different criteria. Location's another one. And I've been playing with it, and it's really super powerful because it allows you to, you can have your lists by different areas that you work, but then you can have these smart lists that cut across all of your categories. So it's just another way to kind of slice and dice everything you have to do. So I've been really happy with it. Got a nice deep dive on that on the website, and I'll have a couple more Summer Series articles coming very soon, so stay tuned for those. All right, Alex. You wrote quite a post this week about building Calliope, which is the technology that underlies Club Mac Stories and App Stories Plus now. And I don't want you to tell everybody about all the details about Kubernetes, but what exactly was this story all about?
Yeah, I won't go too deep here, but this was just a really, really fun story for me to write. Federico and you told me to just go wild with it and not worry about not getting into too much of the technical weeds. I still came at it from a pretty high level, though, so I think most people can get something out of it if they're curious about this new project that we've put together. But I basically ran down from the top, all of the software that we've built over the last almost a year, including a lot of open source projects that are super cool that were built on top of, as well as some of the things that we kind of some of the challenges that we had to tackle when we were doing it, and kind of why we ended up, building an entire CMS, which is something that most people don't generally want to do. But we kind of, I talked through in the story how we arrived at that decision and how we tried to not do it at first, but it really was kind of where it was always going to go for us for this project, and kind of the way that we look at dealing with our own internal tools. So that was fun. I also, if anyone's interested, talked through the horrors of parsing MailChimp emails and turning them into an entire back catalog of content that is, pulled into our system, which was quite a journey in and of itself. And that was a long couple weeks getting that together, but it certainly helped us as we imported the content into our system. And I think it was a cool little story to tell in there. So yeah, if anyone's interested in what I in particular have been up to over the last year, this post is out there. It's pretty long, but I think it's a fun read.
Yeah, it's got some neat innovations in there too, like the conditional static web pages that you created, where we can create a single web page and then dynamically pick what parts of that static web page are displayed to various types of users depending on what they've subscribed to with Club Mac Stories. So that's another neat aspect of it as well.
Yeah, exactly. You can see me make up the term faux dynamism, which people in our developers Discord have told me is not a ridiculous term, but I definitely made it up.
Well, hopefully it'll catch on.
I think it will. I'm trying to push it. I think it's going to catch on.
I think it has legs. All right, we got some news this week too, Alex, from Apple on the app review side. What happened there?
Yes, so Apple as part of an investigation by the Japan Fair Trade Commission, or the JFTC, Apple has made some concessions that are pretty important going forward. So they said that the class of apps called reader apps, which is actually a very wide-ranging set of apps, including, Netflix or Amazon's Kindle e-readers, or there's quite a few other things that fall into this category that Apple, calls reader apps, but it really is. It kind of just means you get the content elsewhere, but you see it or use it on your device. And these apps have historically never been able to link out to their own websites in order to let people, sign up for the external service or pay for, the various pieces of content. So the Kindle app couldn't say, hey, here are your books that you already own, but go to the Kindle ebook store and buy some more books, and then they'll show up here. That wasn't an option before now. Same thing with Netflix, allowing people to go out and sign up for Netflix on their website. They've always been banned from putting those links in their apps. And so Apple has now made this concession where they're going to allow one link to be in the app. And we'll need to see how this comes out ultimately, where, how strict is Apple going to be on that? Are you allowed to kind of add text around the link to say what it's for? Or does it just need to, be a mysterious link sitting there that people can click on? We're not entirely sure on those details, but they have said they're going to allow that, and they're going to allow it globally, not just in Japan. So pretty big moves there in terms of this is something that people have been kind of criticizing Apple for a long time, that they don't allow this. And now, it's going to be allowed to some degree, and we'll have to see how wide-reaching that really ends up being.
Yes. I'm a little skeptical, only because they said a single link, for instance. But we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. It is progress one way or the other. All right. Also this week, we did a post about Relay FM's third annual fundraiser for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. It's September, and September is National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the U.S. And the last 3 years, including this year, Relay FM has done a fundraiser to raise money for St. Jude's Hospital. Check that out. We've got all the details there. We'd love it if you would donate to them. This whole process they're going to be raising money throughout the month of September, but on September 17th, they're doing an 8-hour podcast-a-thon featuring a bunch of your favorite Relay FM podcast hosts. So there's a link in our story that will take you right there if you want to donate. All right, Alex, we also had a bunch of stuff on Club Mac Stories this week. Federico had a couple of shortcuts, which is pretty cool. He's been working on his iOS and iPadOS review, and he had a couple of shortcuts that didn't make the cut for the actual review itself related to PDFs. And so there are new actions in shortcuts for iOS and iPadOS 15 that work with PDFs. And so he has a couple of useful shortcuts there that demo that. Then I did a Mac Stories Recommends on an app called The Clock, which works on your Mac. There's an iPhone and an iPad version as well. But I focused on the Mac because that's where I primarily use it. And it's a pretty simple menu bar app, at least on the surface, that lets you track a bunch of, world clocks. You can pick your cities, and I use it to kind of track what time it is in Rome, where Federico is, and a bunch of other people in my life. And it's really handy. And it also actually has some features in it that make it very useful for setting up meetings if you have a lot of people around the world that you need to figure out time zones and find one that works for everybody. So that's in there, as well as a reader setup. One of our members on the Club Mac Stories Plus Discord shared a setup in the Discord channel that we have dedicated to that. And we published his setup because it's really amazing setup with an iMac and an iPad Pro and a bunch of other hardware that was really neat. So check that out as well. Okay, Alex. We also had App Stories as usual every week. We had a special episode all about the complexity of defining what a great modern Mac app is, because there's been a lot of talk about this. 1Password came out with an early access beta that's an Electron, which got a lot of people upset because, Electron hasn't exactly endeared itself to Mac users over the years. There are a lot of bad Electron Mac apps. There are some that are okay too. And so Federico and I talked a little bit about that, but we also talked about Swift UI and AppKit and Mac Catalyst and all the various ways that Mac apps can be built at this juncture and what it means kind of in terms of what people think of as a great Mac app, but also where things are going and what's going to be the future for building Mac apps. So check that episode out as well. That was a lot of fun to record. All right, Alex, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor this week, and that is Tinderbox 9. Tinderbox is a powerful Mac app that stores and organizes your notes, plans, ideas, bringing all of that into order and providing insights to vast amounts of information collected by you. Maybe you're collecting course materials, planning a wedding, just about anything that requires you to manage data in your day-to-day life or work. Tinderbox can take all of that, impose structure on it, and then help you organize it and find what you need. And now with Tinderbox 9, the app offers 150 new features, including a flexible command bar, smarter artificial intelligence, and a built-in gallery for saving views, improved visualizations of your data, and a whole lot more. Tinderbox also has unparalleled power to analyze, visualize, and understand your notes, acting as a personal assistant, helping you discover connections and relationships between your notes. Tinderbox also integrates with a bunch of apps, including DevonThink, Scrivener, Bookends, Apple Notes, and a bunch more. It's never been easier to get started with Tinderbox 2. There are over 50 tutorial videos available, including a vibrant and active community where you can get started and ask questions. So download Tinderbox 9 today by going to eastgate.com/Tinderbox to try it for free. Our thanks to Tinderbox for their support of the show. Okay, Alex, I think it's time for us to do a little bit of Apple Arcade update because there's some games. I think one of the last times you were on the show, we talked about Zen Pinball Party, and that actually is out now.
Yep, exactly. I still haven't actually gotten my hands on this, but I'm looking forward to this week at some point, when I get a little bit of free time here because, as I said the last time I was on the show, who doesn't like a good pinball game? It's a classic genre. So I'm excited to try this one out and see what the new take is on this, genre of games that I've been playing since, back in middle school when I was messing around on the school computers instead of paying attention.
Also this week, Alex, we had Layton's Mystery Journey come out, which... if you're a Professor Layton fan, you might be interested in this. This is a game that was on iOS a ways back, but now it's part of Arcade. Professor Layton, there's a bunch of these games, they're puzzle games that are on various Nintendo platforms too. I think I've played one of them on the 3DS, but I don't think I've ever played this one on iOS. So I'm going to give it a look because I know that there are a lot of fans out there that love that game a lot. And then also coming soon, I guess, and I don't know how soon is, but coming soon is Lego Star Wars Battles. You looked at the trailer for that one, didn't you, Alex?
I looked for a trailer and couldn't find one, but there is some interesting looking photos on the web. But I'm excited for this game. It looks really fun. I've played some of the Lego Star Wars games before, and they've always been a good genre of game. But this one in particular is a little bit different. They're kind of classically more of adventure games where you're kind of exploring through and following quests and trying to get to the end. And this one is actually a PvP arena battle game. So it seems to have a little bit of tower defense mixed in, which looks pretty interesting. So you kind of go face to face or head to head with another player, and you both, can set up tanks on the field and can deploy whatever type of character that you want. It seems like there's going to be a lot of different ones. I haven't quite figured out how you acquire them, but you basically can send out a bunch of characters onto the field and they fight and try to get to the other side is what it looks like. And it looks pretty cool. I think, a PvP version of a game like this sounds pretty fun. You can't go wrong with tower defense. On the description from the website, let me quote this for you here. It says, "What happens when an Ewok takes on a Tusken Raider? Can a flock of porgs tackle a stormtrooper? Could Chewbacca go toe-to-toe with Boba Fett?" I mean, John, who doesn't want to know the answer to these questions?
These are burning questions in pop culture that need to be answered, and now you can answer them by playing this game. So I'm looking forward to that one myself. All right, Alex, it's time for our Unwind picks. I'm going to go first this week. I'm gonna save you for last on this one, but I have been watching a show that I looked for a while before. It's on CNN, but now it happens to be on HBO Max, and it is Stanley Tucci Searching for Italy. And, I'm a fan of Italy. It's a good thing since I work with a guy from Italy, but I've been there a few times and I love Rome. I love Tuscany. Those are the two places that I've been. But Stanley Tucci goes through a bunch of different regions of Italy, kind of exploring the culture and the cities via food, which, boy, I mean, who doesn't like to explore places via food? I know it's one of my favorite ways to do it. But in any event, there are 6 episodes, and they're about an hour. I think they're about an hour, hour and a half long. And I watched the first 2 so far, which were Naples and Rome. And Naples, explores the city of Naples as well as the Amalfi Coast. And then the one in Rome explores all the different districts in Rome and the different kinds of food that are available there. And you get a nice sense. I mean, the photography is beautiful. You get to see a lot of the main sites from those cities and a lot of the neighborhoods. And they talk to a lot of local restaurateurs and chefs and things like that. And you get a real flavor for what those cities are like, which I like. There's some more with Barcelona, I know, and Milan, and then a couple of other ones. So I'm still working my way through them, but I recommend it. I mean, it's, a lot of us haven't traveled a lot in the last couple of years. So, sitting on your couch, it's not as good as actually going to Italy, but it's still a lot of fun to kind of see these places and get a feel for them and maybe plan a trip for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. This show looks great. I'm gonna have to take a look at this one too. I wonder if they ever eat any tiramisu while they're out there.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will at some point. Some of the desserts are just amazing, and there's liberal drinking going on in this show too. I think a lot of limoncello and wine and other things. So
good stuff. If you're in the Club Mac Stories Discord, you've seen me and Federico argue about whether I've ever had real tiramisu since I've never been to Italy, but I'd like to find out someday.
If you haven't had the food in Italy, it's as Federico would not consider it to be real. So you're not going to win that fight. So don't even try it.
All right, John. Time for my pick. Coming up next, I've got a show that was in the mid 2010s, I think, when this show ran, but it is still really, really good. It is the show Community. And I have a bold statement to start us out here. I think season 1 of Community is one of the greatest written television seasons ever. It is just so good. And in particular, if you are a television fan, I might need to caveat it with that. This show is doing references all over the place. The whole show is kind of like a giant, callback to various TV references. And in season 1, they do it exquisitely. The characters are so good. I don't know. It's just, you've got to watch this first season of Community. As you go further through, it definitely is a show that kind of goes downhill a little bit. It's almost like there's only so many seasons of TV you can do that are just a bunch of callbacks back to other TV and movies from back in time. And so it does kind of go downhill. You might fall off, especially like the 5th and 6th seasons. I don't quite know if they're worth it, but everybody's got to see season 1 of this show if you are at all interested in TV. It's exquisite.
Yeah, it really is good. And I hear you on how it went downhill a little bit. I think it got almost too aware of its own success and was maybe a little too self-conscious of their formula as they got towards the end. But it's still a great show. And this is one of those that, usually a couple of times a year around the holidays, Apple will have, in the iTunes app, they'll have various TV seasons for really cheap. And I picked this one up a ways back, maybe a year or 2 ago, for a very good price. And I mentioned it, of course, on Twitter. And of course, I got all the people saying, why would you ever buy this? It's available streaming. Well, folks, check out the streaming wars and how things are moving from one service to another all the time, some of which you may not be willing to subscribe to. So I do think it's worth buying some of these things if you are a big fan of them. And that's a way you can, watch them whenever you want. So that's just my 2 cents on what apparently was a controversial thing to say on the internet. I think actually anything is a controversial thing to say on the internet if you find the right audience for it.
It does seem that way.
Doesn't it seem that way? All right, Alex, I guess we ought to call it for today. This is Friday after all, and we got to launch into our weekends and take it a little easy ourselves and do a little unwinding. So, all right, I want to thank our sponsor again, and that is Tinderbox9. You can find me over on Twitter and Instagram, where I am at John Voorhees, JohnVoorHs. And Alex, where can folks find you?
You can find me on Instagram at AJGUYOT or on Twitter at _AlexGuillot. That's ALEXGUYOT.
All right. Thanks a lot for filling in again this week, Alex. I will talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Have a good weekend, John.